This is from Sportsnot, 2024 defensive rankings, offseason outlook for all 32 teams. So these are the top defensive rankings. They go Jets 1, Ravens 2, 49ers 3, Chiefs 4, Browns 5. Defensive needs, defensive line, edge, and safety, impending free agents, Za'Darius Smith, Jordan Elliott, Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst, Rodney McLeod, Sione Takitaki, and Anthony Walker. Some of those defenders will leave, depriving the Browns' defense of its depth, combined with late season regression, will give us some pause in 2024. Let's start with Za'Darius Smith. I know you've written an article about edge rusher analysis. Do you think he's coming back? And, all those defensive tackles, they need a couple of those, 2 or 3 of those guys back as well. But let's start with Smith. Do you think Za'Darius is coming back?
I don't know him well enough. He talked really once, I think, at Greenbrier, and he really wasn't available. What I'm told by all the players, they really liked it here and got along with Myles Garrett and the group and likes the way Jim Schwartz used him and so forth. But he restructured, when they traded for him, the Browns had to agree to restructure his contract to give him guaranteed money, but also to allow him to be a free agent after a year. So he is a free agent. He wanted to be a free agent. Will it be enough that he wants to come back? Or will somebody else offer him on the open market, quite a bit of more money? I've been around this business long enough to realize that, especially when guys get in their 30s and somebody offers a lot more money somewhere else, they tend to follow the money. Some guys you see with the Eagles, Fletcher Cox or Brandon Graham, might have taken a little less, but they wanted to finish their career with the Eagles. A guy like Smith now is moved around a little bit, Baltimore to Green Bay, Minnesota, now with the Browns. I don't compare him to Jadeveon Clowney, but I feel like Jadeveon Clowney was just pretty much year to year highest bidder, and I don't know what will happen with Smith. I do know this: Jim Schwartz was very complimentary of him all year. When his sack production, I think he ended with 5.5. But a lot of them were at the end of the year, and it just seemed like he wasn't getting a lot of sacks, and that's when you heard sacks don't mean that much. It's how they affect the play, and they graded him out very high, and I just think he's a high priority. It's just going to be, are other teams interested, in him? If they really want him, they need to sign him before free agency. There's a fine line. We all know in the free agency, guys right out of the chute seem to get offered a lot more money. And then a lot of those guys they're still available, and they end up signing 1-year deals at the beginning of training camp with some team, waiting and waiting and waiting. So the Browns got him via trade. And so that to me, I still think, is if you can find trade partners, those are your best way to make sure they're on your team, as opposed to a guy wanting to, go to the highest bidder and then you get into a price war. So, yeah, I would say they're going to try very hard to keep him, because I think Jim Schwartz is going to tell the front office, we really want this guy. But they did sign Okoronkwo last year to a multi-year deal in free agency. Really, at the time, most of us thought to be the long-term answer opposite of Myles Garrett. And I think he showed a lot. Obviously got hurt at the end of the year, but you're much better having 3 of those guys as opposed to 2. Plus Alex Wright came on, second-year guy, third-round pick a couple years ago, had like 5 sacks in the second half of the season, and it just depends on how high they are of him. But I think with the priority on the defensive line, you definitely want another veteran. Smith would be ideal, in my opinion. He'd be the top priority. And then on the inside, as you said, there's 3 of them in the rotation besides Dalvin Tomlinson that are free agents. I really think they need to get 2 of them back. Maurice Hurst has indicated he liked to stay. So I think they can keep him if they wish. And then it comes down to Shelby Harris. He was available at training camp last year because he's one of those 30-something guys that seem to be available every year. Um, and then I don't know what they feel like with Jordan Elliott. They might try to do a short-term thing with him. Um, he was in the last year of his deal and he had, I think, 2.8 million guaranteed or a deal. And I think they might even cut him, but they renegotiated, restructured, gave him some guaranteed before the season and reduced his contract. So I really don't know what they think about him, but I think they'd be happy to bring him back, all three of the interior guys, because that team went from in the 20s to like 10th or 11th in the NFL in rush defense, dropped from 135 to 105. I know those numbers got escalated a little to the end of the year, but they were much, much improved. And you don't want to go back to where you were before. And I think Jim Schwartz is a reason those guys were brought in. Maybe not exactly the names, but he had a big say in Andrew Berry saying, I need a good rotation of defensive linemen. So I think it's going to come down to money, as it always does. But they do have a big piece, as I wrote today, about Dalvin Tomlinson, because you have him under contract. It's now getting what I would think probably not so much a lot of long-term free agents, but 1-year pieces, because Siaki Ika was drafted in the third round, but he didn't really play all year. He played a couple times. He had no tackles. So you can't just turn it over to him, in my opinion. You need to get a couple of those veterans that can step in and play right away and help with the run stopping.